Hey, grade 10s, not gonna be what happened. I had to create this video a second time. So hopefully you watch it, hopefully you enjoy it. But today we're going through Act 4 of Othello. So let's get stuck into it. So we're in our OneNote in Act 4 for today. First things first is a summary. So watch this video if you can get it to work and give me some dot points on the key moments, just like we have in class. If it doesn't work, I'm also gonna go through this in this video, so make sure you're paying attention. So, scene 1. We have Iago pretending to be supportive, but he's actually really winding up Othello and kind of poking him and poisoning his mind more and more to the point where Othello collapses in an epileptic fit. And Iago comments, "Thus credulous fools are caught." It's kind of saying, thus these people are these fools. This person who doesn't know what he's doing is easily caught and believing my lies. When he comes around, Iago tells him to listen to a conversation between Cassio and him, and he's going to talk about Desdemona, but we know that he's actually going to question Cassio about Bianca. She arrives and angrily throws the handkerchief to Cassio, and again, this confirms Othello's suspicions. He thinks it's Desdemona gave the handkerchief to Cassio, and then Cassio gave it to Bianca, and Cassio's just playing the field. And he says, "And he hath given it his whore," for referring to Bianca there. From here, Othello is determined to kill Desdemona that night, saying, "I will chop her into messes." And Iago suggests strangle her in bed, even the bed she hath contaminated. So that idea that she's contaminated this bed by bringing someone else into it, so strangle her there. Just then, Desdemona enters with Lodovico. He brings a letter from Venice telling Othello to travel home and leave Cassio in command of Cyprus. As Othello reads, Desdemona and Lodovico talk about the disagreement between Cassio and Othello. And Othello becomes so angry at Desdemona for defending Cassio that he hits her.
My lord.
I am glad to see you mad.
Why, sweet Othello.
Devil!
He insults her and yells at her. "Out of my sight," he says. He then leaves after attempting to regain his composure. Lodovico is shocked and he's kind of questions it. Is this like the noble Moor? Is this the person I've heard so much about and who people say is great? And Iago, playing both sides again, suggests that Othello's behavior has become increasingly erratic. But he knows why it's erratic. It's him. He is the problem that is making Othello react erratically. So yeah, that first scene, a few key moments there that you can jot down, in relation to Othello talking to Iago having the conversation with Cassio, and then the slapping of Desdemona, where it's a key kind of point where we see these gender roles, which is the focus for this act, in that Othello's power over Desdemona and her reaction to it. The next scene 2. Othello questions Emilia about Desdemona, so he's trying to get information, but Emilia defends her, saying, "For if she be not honest, chaste and true, there's no man happy." Kind of saying, like, if she's not honest, then no one is, because she is perfect. We know Desdemona is innocent. He then questioned Desdemona herself, calling her impudent strumpet and the cunning whore of Venice, but does not ask her directly about Cassio or the handkerchief. And she says, "By heaven, you do me wrong." But he refuses to believe her. So again, she protests her innocence and tells Othello that she's done nothing wrong, but he won't have it. Desdemona then asks Iago for his help, honest Iago, of course. Emilia says she is convinced the Moor is abused by some most villainous knave. This idea here that he is being poisoned by someone. And in this case, it's Iago, but she just doesn't know it yet. We have translations over here, knave meaning dishonest. So Iago is this dishonest person that she's talking about without her realizing. Iago calls her a fool and sends the woman away with the promises that all things shall be well. Again, connection to the gender roles. They go to a male to solve the problem for them, but he, again, spins his web around them and calls them fools and says they're being ridiculous. Rodrigo arrives, angry that Iago's promises to help with Desdemona have come to nothing, despite all the jewels he has given Iago to give to Desdemona. He comments, "Your words and performances are no kin together, so what you say and what you do doesn't match up." Iago convinces Rodrigo that in order to stop Othello and Desdemona leaving Cyprus, he must remove Cassio by knocking out his brains. So here we see the puzzle pieces coming into play. He's setting it all up for that final act where it all goes down. The final act in this scene in this act, Emilia helps Desdemona get ready for bed and express her concern about Othello's behavior. Desdemona remains loyal to him, but cannot get a song out of her head which she heard sung by her mother's maid called Barbary, who was in love with a man who went mad. It expressed her fortune and she died singing it. Desdemona says she cannot believe that any woman would be unfaithful to her husband. She says, "Beshrew me if I would do such a wrong for the world." So again, we see this innocence of Desdemona. She is loyal to Othello. She is faithful. She sees unfaithful women as terribly wrong and doesn't have any inkling for that. Amelia then blames men for not understanding that women have feelings just like they do, saying, I do think it is their husband's faults if wives do fall. So kind of blaming the husband for an infidelity of a wife. Like she kind of goes against the societal norms and says, well, it's the husband's fault. It's the husband who should see a woman's emotions and know what's going on. So those are the 3 scenes there. Pause the video here and jot down the key moments. Remember, the more information you have here, the better it's going to be for you in the future. Now we're on to our close reading. So there's 4 activities here. First 2, I'm going to really talk through and help you with. Second 2 is more about your ideas. So the first one, paraphrase the quotes, rewrite each line in a more modern English. We'll go through that today. What important language can be found in the quote? Highlight it. So again, I'll go through some of the key parts in the language devices, because remember, for your essay, you need to be able to identify a language device and the meaning behind it and why it's used. So we're going to keep practicing that skill. The third and fourth one, what does the language show about the character? So what does this reveal about characters? And what do these quotes reveal about females in Elizabethan England? This is the kind of main part of this Act 4 lesson. So we're going to focus on gender roles as another theme. We've looked at jealousy. We're going to look at gender roles today. So looking at how does this show females' role in society and where they sit. So the first quote, it says, all's one, good faith, how foolish are our minds. If I do die before, prithee shroud me in one of those same sheets. So here Desdemona is speaking to Amelia about Othello's suspicions. And she's saying, oh, it's all good faith, it's gonna be okay. She's trying to convince herself. And she says, how foolish are our minds? And there's a couple of questions I'd like you to answer here. But she says our minds. And what she's really referring to here is females. She's saying how foolish females are. I'm getting caught up in my emotions. I'm worrying about my emotions and they're getting a hold of me, which was seen in Elizabethan England as a very feminine trait as far as those gender roles go. Men were meant to be logical and calm and even-tempered, where the females were meant to be emotional and reactive. So we see a bit of a reversal here. Othello is taking on those female gender roles of being reactive and emotional and bursting out. Where here Desdemona and Amelia too are kind of thinking through what's happening, but she also does then blame herself, saying, I'm being foolish. Instead of looking into why she believes and what's actually happening. So how foolish are our minds? She's referring to females there and links with BVAs. She says, if I do die before, prithee, which means please, shroud me, so cover me, in one of those same sheets. And what she's doing here, she's alluding to her wedding sheets, these white wedding sheets. Now they're symbolic. So these wedding sheets are symbolic of their marriage to Othello, but also that relationship and her innocence. So she's saying, if I do die, like cover me in my wedding sheets because I am faithful to Othello. I love him and I'm faithful to him. So pause the video here and have a go at answering these 2 questions. The second quote is in relation to that song we read in the summary. So she says, my mother had a maid called Barbary. This is Desdemona speaking. She was in love, and he she loved proved mad. Now, mad in this context doesn't mean angry, it means insane. Back then, mental health was not something they were aware of. They had this idea of madness. So this maid was in love, but the person she loved proved crazy, proved mad, and did forsake her, betrayed her. She had a song of Willow, an old thing 'twas, but it expressed her fortune meaning her fate and what was going to happen to her, and she died singing it. That song tonight will not go from my mind. So she's thinking of this song that her mother's maid used to sing in relation to this idea of death, and it told the fortune, it told this maid that she would die, and she died singing it. So what we call this is foreshadowing. As far as the device goes, we are hinting at what's going to happen in the future, and that event is the death of Desdemona. So in her being really caught up and can't really get this song out of her head, it's foreshadowing, it's hinting at the fact that she is going to suffer the same fate as the maid Barbary. So I want you to think about the purpose this passage serves, and I'll just kind of paraphrase it for you, but let's answer that question down below. So there we have it, a couple of questions along the way, and then these 4 to come back to really link to the gender roles. As I said, next lesson, we're gonna look at a discussion question on gender. So make sure you really understand these quotes. We're gonna be using them in our analytical writing. That's all for today. Just a couple of quick activities. Make sure you're emailing me your work by tomorrow. That's all due. So make sure you're getting that in. Really important you guys stay on top of this. The exam at the moment is still running week 8. We've got a few weeks left to really get through the play, dive into it, look at our analytical writing, and then you've got the exam. So make sure you're following along. We don't really have a whole lot of time to waste. So hopefully you're keeping up. Any questions, send me an email, and stay safe, guys. All the best.